Now, an investigation by the Guardian newspaper this week has revealed King Charles and the late Queen Elizabeth received about £1 billion from a number of estates.
London, breaking news. In a move that has sent ripples across Britain's royal watchers, Queen Camilla has reportedly raised the prospect of securing a portion of King Charles III's private inheritance for her daughter, Laura Lopes. The suggestion, insiders say, was floated during a discreet family discussion about the king's personal estate assets, separate from the crown's official holdings, but steeped in centuries of history and tradition. While inheritance disputes are common in ordinary families, within the House of Windsor, such matters take on a weight that transcends money. They touch the very foundations of legitimacy, continuity, and public trust. And this time, the Queen Consort's private plea is seen as a flashpoint in an already delicate chapter of the monarchy. The British monarchy stands at a crossroads. Barely 2 years into King Charles's reign, the institution has endured health scares, generational shifts, and the ongoing rehabilitation of its public image after the death of Queen Elizabeth II. The late monarch's steady hand and aura of permanence long shielded the Windsors from deep scrutiny. Now, the focus has turned sharply to the king's decisions, particularly those that affect succession, stability, and the equitable management of royal wealth. It is against this backdrop that Camilla's request emerges. At first glance, it appears almost natural, a mother seeking to secure her daughter's financial future. Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter from her first marriage to Andrew Parker Bowles, has long remained a private figure. Unlike her half-brothers, Prince William and Prince Harry, she has never courted public life, instead dedicating herself to family and a career in the art world. For Camilla, rewarding such loyalty and discretion with a tangible legacy seems less indulgence than maternal instinct. But within royal circles, instinct collides with protocol. The late Queen Elizabeth was adamant that the monarchy must project fairness, stability, and an unbroken line of succession. By custom, King Charles's private wealth believed to span art collections, estates, and investments worth hundreds of millions would pass largely to his direct heirs, with Catherine, Princess of Wales, playing a central role as steward for the next generation. Redirecting assets to Laura, however modest, risks disrupting that continuity. According to palace insiders, Camilla raised the subject with Charles in an informal but pointed way. It was not framed as a demand, nor couched in overtly political terms. Instead, it was cast as an act of family unity, a chance to weave her daughter more tightly into the Windsor fabric without challenging the crown's hierarchy. Observers note that this is not the first time Camilla has subtly elevated her children. Both Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes have attended select royal events, including the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Their presence has been presented as natural extensions of Camilla's life, a quiet acknowledgement of the blended family Charles and Camilla formally established in 2005. Still, those appearances carried no constitutional weight. Inheritance is different. Inheritance signals permanence. For Camilla, the plea represents not simply money but validation, a recognition that her bloodline too deserves a foothold in the centuries-old tapestry of Windsor legacy. King Charles III is no stranger to balancing competing loyalties. His entire reign, short as it has been marked by efforts to preserve the monarchy's traditional core while modernizing its public image. Sources suggest that Charles listened carefully as Camilla outlined her case, acknowledging her maternal concerns, but also calculating the potential fallout. The king knows better than most how fragile public trust can be. Polling consistently shows Catherine and William as the most admired members of the royal family. Catherine, in particular, has become a symbol of grace under pressure, her popularity further cemented during her recent health struggles. Redirecting even a fraction of wealth away from the Wales household would be interpreted by many as a slight, undermining not only Catherine, but the very line of succession through Prince George. For Charles, this is not just about private assets. It is about narrative. The monarchy thrives on continuity, the sense that the crown's past, present, and future form an unbroken line. Any deviation, however well-intentioned, risks introducing cracks in that carefully maintained image. Into this delicate equation steps Princess Anne, Charles's sister, and lifelong confidante. Known for her blunt pragmatism and unshakable loyalty to the institution, Anne has reportedly advised her brother against any alteration to the estate plan. For Anne, the principle is clear. Royal inheritance must follow the line of succession, not personal sentiment. Her stance carries extraordinary weight. Among the Windsors, Anne has emerged as a quiet powerhouse, trusted by both the public and her brother for her no-nonsense approach. If she sees Camilla's suggestion as a threat to stability, Charles will find it difficult to ignore her counsel. Though the details remain private, whispers of the inheritance debate have already captured public imagination. Royal finances have long been a subject of fascination, and the prospect of a rift between Charles's wife and his heir touches on deeper anxieties. Can the monarchy remain united in an era of unprecedented scrutiny? What happens when private loyalty collides with public duty? For Camilla, the issue is personal. For Charles, it is existential. And for Catherine, William, and their children, it is nothing less than the security of their place at the heart of the crown. This is not the end of the story, merely the opening act. Over the coming weeks, House of Windsor insiders suggest the inheritance debate will continue to play out quietly behind closed doors, its resolution shaping not only the king's legacy, but the monarchy's trajectory for decades to come. The revelation of Laura Lopes' potential claim to a share of King Charles's estate has ignited a storm of public debate, pushing long-standing questions about legitimacy, royal precedent, and the future of the monarchy back into the spotlight. While the royal household has yet to release an official statement addressing the matter, the silence itself is beginning to generate further speculation. Across Britain, commentators, royal correspondents, and legal analysts are dissecting the possible implications of this claim. The monarchy has historically kept matters of inheritance private, governed by carefully designed wills that preserve the integrity of the crown's assets and its continuation. Yet the suggestion that Camilla's daughter, who, despite her proximity, holds no royal title and has lived her life largely outside the royal spotlight, could demand inclusion, raises questions about where the boundaries of royal inheritance should lie. Public mood, divided between tradition and sympathy. The general public appears sharply divided. On one hand, traditionalists argue that inheritance within the royal family must remain within the bloodline directly tied to the crown. For them, the idea of Laura Lopes making a claim is unprecedented, even provocative, an intrusion into an institution that relies heavily on symbolic continuity. They point to the monarchy's survival over centuries precisely because it has maintained clear hierarchies and boundaries. On the other hand, there is a growing chorus of sympathy for Laura. To many, she represents a link to Camilla's life before Charles, and her claim is seen not as opportunistic but as a matter of fairness. After all, critics argue, Camilla has been by King Charles's side for decades, supporting him through tumultuous times, and her family has inevitably been drawn into the orbit of the monarchy's sacrifices and scrutiny. For some, denying Laura any share might appear as an unjust rejection of Camilla's legacy. Media narratives, framing Laura as a catalyst. The press has played a decisive role in amplifying the issue. Tabloids lean into the drama, framing Laura Lopes as a disruptive force that could fracture the unity of the Windsor family, at a time when King Charles is expected to focus on consolidating his reign. In contrast, more serious outlets suggest Laura's claim might become the catalyst for overdue discussions about how the monarchy adapts to modern definitions of family, stepchildren, and blended households. Royal correspondents note that Camilla's elevation to queen consort was itself once unimaginable, reflecting a slow but undeniable evolution in royal tradition. If the monarchy adapted once, they argue, it may need to adapt again, especially when faced with a society that values inclusivity and fairness in inheritance rights. This raises profound questions. Should stepchildren of monarchs be formally recognized in inheritance matters, or must the monarchy remain rigid in its bloodline-based structure? Reactions from key figures. So far, none of the senior royals, Prince William, Catherine, or Princess Anne, have commented publicly. Insiders, however, suggest that William views the claim as a potential distraction from his own future role. His priority is preserving public trust and ensuring that the monarchy appears stable and united. Any sense of division, especially over money and inheritance, risks damaging the crown's carefully cultivated image. Princess Anne, known for her blunt and pragmatic approach, reportedly sees the matter as private and not for public consumption. Yet even she is said to be concerned that the issue could undermine broader conversations about the monarchy's role in a cost-of-living crisis. The public's tolerance for royal wealth is already strained. Headlines about inheritance battles could feed Republican arguments. As for Catherine, observers note her usual discretion, but point out that she has subtly emphasized unity and continuity in recent public appearances. Dressed in understated but symbolic ensembles, she has reinforced her image as the steady, modern face of the monarchy, perhaps a quiet counterbalance to the swirling controversy. Camilla herself remains the figure at the center of it all. Her silence is read in multiple ways, either as dignified restraint or as a sign of behind-the-scenes maneuvering. Friends of the Queen Consort insist that her priority remains the king's well-being and the crown's stability. Yet whispers persist that she supports Laura's interests quietly, seeking not to disrupt Charles's reign, but to ensure her daughter's long-term security. A turning point in royal inheritance? What makes this moment particularly significant is the timing. King Charles's reign is still in its formative years, and every controversy is magnified. A public dispute over inheritance risks overshadowing his efforts to position himself as a modern monarch while protecting the monarchy's ancient traditions. The broader question is not simply about one woman's claim, but about whether the monarchy can continue to operate under old rules in a new era. With Laura Lopes' name now firmly in the headlines, the monarchy faces a choice: dismiss the claim quietly in the hope it fades, or address it head-on and set a precedent for how step relations are handled in the royal estate. Either way, the outcome will reverberate not just within palace walls but across a nation, and perhaps even the Commonwealth still grappling with what the monarchy means in the 21st century. Royal inheritance disputes are not a modern invention, nor are they unique to the House of Windsor. Throughout British history, questions of succession, property, and personal wealth within the monarchy have often spilled into the public domain, leaving long-lasting scars on the institution's image. The current rumors surrounding King Charles's inheritance and the reported claims of Laura Lopes evoke comparisons with earlier dynastic challenges, each of which shaped the perception of monarchy as both a family and a political institution. One of the most telling precedents can be traced back to the Victorian era. Queen Victoria's extensive wealth, including properties acquired through both personal funds and crown allowances, created confusion at the time of her death in 1901. A significant portion of her private estates was passed directly to her children, yet tensions arose over whether the crown should reclaim part of her personal fortune to secure future monarchs. The controversy was quietly managed, but it raised the perennial question of what is royal versus what is personal in the assets of a monarch. Fast forward to the Edwardian period. King Edward VII's death in 1910 again highlighted these blurred lines. Edward had enjoyed a luxurious lifestyle, amassing debts and obligations. The challenge fell to King George V to not only settle his father's outstanding finances, but also to reassure a public increasingly sensitive to royal extravagance. Newspapers of the time were rife with speculation about the family's private fortune, echoing today's fascination with Charles's rumored diurnal balance between crown estate, duchy incomes, and private wealth. More recently, the passing of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, in 2002, brought inheritance issues to light in a subtler but still controversial fashion. Her estate, estimated at around £70 million, included art collections, jewels, and property. Much of it was discreetly passed to Queen Elizabeth II, avoiding the inheritance tax that most British citizens face. The exemption fueled debates about whether the royals operate under a different legal and moral framework than the general public. At the time, it sparked quiet but pointed criticism, resurfacing questions of transparency and privilege. The echoes of these earlier controversies resonate strongly today. In the case of King Charles, the possibility of Laura Lopes pressing claims against her mother's marital estate highlights the evolving complexity of blended royal families. Unlike in earlier centuries, modern Britain is familiar with divorce, remarriage, and stepchildren. Camilla's children, while not royal by blood, symbolize the broader question of what family means within the monarchy. Should inheritance law treat them as separate, or should the king's will reflect a broader inclusivity of Camilla's family ties? This is not merely a personal question, but one with symbolic resonance for a country that prides itself on modern values of fairness and blended family structures. Princess Anne's subtle but firm interventions in public statements recall her consistent role as the voice of pragmatism. She has long argued that the monarchy must maintain focus on duty and service rather than personal privilege. Her current stance emphasizing unity and restraint feels reminiscent of her interventions during the aftermath of Princess Diana's death, when the family struggled to reconcile personal grief with public expectation. Then, as now, Anne appears positioned as the stabilizer, seeking to remind both the family and the public that inheritance should never overshadow service. The historical record makes clear that inheritance disputes often coincide with moments of transition and vulnerability for the crown. The current speculation about Charles's estate arrives as Britain contemplates the inevitable shift of power toward Prince William and Catherine. In this light, Laura Lopes' supposed claims are more than family drama. They represent an echo of centuries, old tensions, how to balance bloodline, marriage, duty, and property in a system that remains both deeply traditional and perpetually scrutinized. The lesson from history is stark. Every dispute, every rumor, becomes a mirror of broader social anxieties about fairness, privilege, and the evolving meaning of monarchy. And in the age of digital media, such tensions do not fade into polite whispers. They explode into viral headlines, shaping the future of royal legitimacy itself. The unfolding debate around King Charles's inheritance is not confined to the gilded halls of royal residences. It has ignited a storm of discussion among the British public and global observers, who see in this moment a telling reflection of both the monarchy's vulnerabilities and its enduring allure. Public sentiment has become increasingly fragmented, with some voices urging transparency and fairness, while others emphasize tradition and the king's right to private discretion. In many ways, this divide mirrors the broader debates about the monarchy's role in 21st century Britain. British tabloids and broadsheets alike have seized upon the story, offering starkly contrasting narratives. On one side, outlets sympathetic to Camilla have framed Laura Lopes' alleged pursuit of inheritance as a natural extension of modern family dynamics, arguing that stepchildren, though not royal by blood, should not be excluded from their mother's marital legacy. On the other side, critics have underscored that any move to involve Camilla's children in the royal inheritance could undermine centuries of tradition, feeding public skepticism about privilege and entitlement. These contrasting frames highlight how media continues to shape not only the monarchy's public image, but also the very interpretation of royal duty and fairness. In this charged climate, Prince William and Catherine, the Prince and Princess of Wales, have emerged as symbolic figures of reassurance. Their measured silence, coupled with subtle signals of continuity and stability, has reassured many that the monarchy's future remains secure, even as the present feels unsettled. William's reputation for steadiness and Catherine's admired poise offer a stark contrast to the noise surrounding Charles's estate. Many commentators note that the couple represents a generational shift, a monarchy less about personal wealth and more about service, accessibility, and relatability. The public's hope, voiced repeatedly in town halls, online forums, and community conversations, is that William and Catherine will embody the values of modern Britain: integrity, fairness, and empathy. In them, many see the antidote to the perception of excess and secrecy that has occasionally tainted the royal family's image. If they stay true to their course, as one commentator in The Times put it, William and Catherine may yet restore the monarchy's moral capital. Princess Anne's role, though less glamorous, has not gone unnoticed. Her emphasis on duty over inheritance resonates with older generations who recall her tireless public service. Anne's pragmatic voice is frequently cited as a stabilizing influence, a reminder that monarchy is not, at its core, about personal wealth, but about symbolic continuity and national service. Her quiet insistence on restraint provides a counterweight to the fevered speculation of the press, appealing to those who view the current debate as a distraction from more pressing issues of governance and public duty. The reaction to Camilla, meanwhile, remains complicated. While her public approval has improved significantly since her marriage to Charles, moments like this rekindle latent doubts. For some, the idea of her daughter pressing inheritance claims reinforces a sense of distance between Camilla's family and the traditional Windsor line. For others, it simply humanizes the queen consort, framing her as a mother whose children deserve recognition and fairness. The tension between these perspectives underscores the fragile equilibrium Camilla occupies within the royal framework, simultaneously accepted, yet never fully beyond scrutiny. International observers have also weighed in. In the United States, commentators often frame the debate through the lens of celebrity and wealth, portraying the Windsors as a family drama that mirrors Hollywood dynasties. In Europe, particularly in monarchies like Spain and the Netherlands, there is sharper interest in the institutional implications. What happens to the monarchy's credibility when private inheritance disputes spill into public discourse? Such comparisons remind us that the British crown, though unique, exists within a wider constellation of royal families, facing similar challenges of transparency and modernization. Perhaps the most profound dimension of the current moment lies in the public's shifting expectations. In an age where ordinary families face rising costs, inheritance taxes, and financial uncertainty, many demand that royals be held to comparable standards. The prospect of private wealth passing untaxed or being extended to step-relatives is viewed by some as fundamentally unjust. This public scrutiny is not merely about money, it is about legitimacy. The monarchy's survival in the long run depends less on its wealth than on its ability to resonate with the moral compass of its people. Thus, the inheritance debate, however arcane it may seem, has become a crucible for larger questions. What does monarchy mean in today's Britain? Who is it for? And how must it adapt to remain credible in the eyes of future generations? As King Charles's reign edges forward, these questions will continue to define both his legacy and the path William and Catherine are destined to inherit. Behind the public spectacles and carefully crafted statements lies a far more fragile and complex reality inside the royal household. While newspapers and commentators frame Laura Lopes' request for a share in Charles's inheritance as a legal or ethical debate, within palace walls, it is a matter of family identity, loyalty, and the survival of the monarchy's mystique. Each royal member, knowingly or not, is shaping the trajectory of the crown with their choices and silences. At the center of this storm sits King Charles himself, a man who has spent decades in waiting only to face challenges almost immediately upon ascending the throne. Advisors close to Buckingham Palace suggest that Charles is deeply torn. On one hand, he is a father figure to Laura, who grew up under his care after his marriage to Camilla. On the other, he is king, a custodian of centuries of royal tradition that dictates inheritance should be preserved for the direct line of succession. His reluctance to publicly address Laura's claims is not indecision, but rather a strategic delay, an attempt to let the storm blow over before taking action. Yet, insiders warn that silence may be read as weakness, emboldening those who feel excluded from the royal fold. For Camilla, the queen consort, this moment is deeply personal. Behind her public composure lies the impossible task of protecting her daughter's interests while safeguarding her husband's legacy. Courtiers reveal that Camilla has quietly lobbied for Charles to acknowledge Laura in his will, arguing that private assets, such as Sandringham or Balmoral, could be divided without undermining the crown estates, which are constitutionally protected. Critics argue, however, that even such a compromise would fracture the symbolic unity of the royal family, setting a precedent for private claims to blur with institutional responsibilities. For Camilla, any victory for Laura would be seen as her own influence, rekindling accusations that she places her family above the monarchy. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach, reportedly views the situation with characteristic bluntness. Sources close to her suggest that she finds the debate unseemly, arguing that the monarchy cannot afford to appear as if it is negotiating its wealth like a commercial dynasty. Her loyalty remains firmly with her brother's role as sovereign and with William, whose future reign she sees as central to stability. By voicing her opposition in private, Anne positions herself as the guardian of tradition, a counterweight to Camilla's maternal instincts. Meanwhile, William and Catherine remain strategically silent. Their decision to stay out of the fray reflects their long-term vision. Every appearance they make, every handshake and speech, subtly contrasts their quiet dignity with the controversy swirling around Charles and Camilla. Palace insiders note that William has privately stressed the importance of protecting the line of succession, ensuring that resources and symbolism remain focused on preparing him for kingship. Catherine, with her polished empathy and strong connection to the public, has continued to emphasize family values and duty in her engagements, subtly reminding Britons of the qualities they expect from their future monarchs. Behind closed doors, negotiations are ongoing. Legal advisors have drawn up scenarios ranging from Laura receiving a discreet private trust to her being entirely excluded from the king's estate. Some argue that a compromise is inevitable. Others believe that exclusion, though harsh, is the only way to preserve the crown's integrity. These discussions are not merely about finances, they are about narrative. Each outcome tells a story, either of unity and continuity or of fracture and favoritism. The public, though often kept at arm's length from such details, senses the tension. Opinion polls reflect a growing concern. While many express sympathy for Laura as a daughter seeking recognition, a majority believes the monarchy must remain above the squabbles of blended families. In this climate, William and Catherine's role as a stabilizing force becomes even more vital. Their refusal to be drawn into the drama allows them to represent what Britons yearn for, a monarchy unshaken by private disputes, focused instead on service and continuity. As the inheritance question looms, Charles's legacy is at stake. He must decide whether he will be remembered as the monarch who allowed personal ties to cloud institutional duty, or as the king who safeguarded the crown for the next generation. The stakes could not be higher, and within this crucible of loyalty and legacy, the entire royal family is being tested. This is no longer just a family dispute. It is a defining moment for the monarchy in the 21st century. The inheritance saga swirling around King Charles's estate has done more than spark speculation about money. It has become a prism through which the public glimpses the monarchy's fragility, adaptability, and ultimate destiny. At its heart, the question is not merely whether Laura Lopes, Camilla's daughter from her first marriage, should share in the king's private wealth. The deeper issue is how the House of Windsor defines family in an era when the traditional bonds of bloodline monarchy are tested by blended families, modern marriages, and shifting public expectations. From the outside, the king's decision to maintain Catherine, Princess of Wales, as the principal steward of royal inheritance represents continuity. It affirms the Windsor doctrine that assets, be they estates, artworks, or symbolic treasures, flow along the direct line of succession. Yet the mere surfacing of Camilla's request has opened a door that may never fully close. It has invited conversations about equity, about recognition for stepchildren, and about the monarchy's ability to reflect the plural realities of modern British households. Inside the palace, Catherine emerges, strengthened. Her dignified silence, coupled with public admiration for her resilience during recent health challenges, reinforces her role as the monarchy's unifying figure. Supporters see her as the embodiment of stability, the anchor for William and the children who represent the crown's future. William, for his part, has chosen quiet determination. He does not openly enter the fray, yet every signal suggests he intends to uphold the legacy pathway that ensures George, Charlotte, and Louis inherit not only the monarchy, but its wealth and narrative power. Camilla, meanwhile, confronts a delicate balancing act. Her attempt to advocate for Laura has underscored her humanity, a mother's instinct to protect her own bloodline, but it has also revealed the limitations of her influence within an institution that prizes precedent above sentiment. Her position remains secure as queen consort, but this episode casts a shadow. It reminds her, and the public, that her integration into the Windsor story is still partial, still subject to the quiet veto of tradition. Princess Anne, ever the pragmatist, has emerged as the decisive voice. Her counsel to Charles not only shaped the immediate outcome, but also reaffirmed her role as the monarchy's stabilizer. She represents the bridge between Elizabeth II's era and Charles's reign, ensuring that the crown does not yield too much to personal emotion at the expense of institutional survival. Beyond the palace walls, public reaction reveals a divide. Some sympathize with Camilla, arguing that blended families deserve recognition in inheritance law and moral practice. Others, however, side firmly with Catherine, seeing any diversion of assets as a betrayal of the monarchy's compact with its people. The debate taps into broader anxieties about wealth distribution, privilege, and trust in institutions at a time of political uncertainty and economic strain. Looking ahead, the diocese of inheritance may become a recurring flashpoint. Legal scholars note that Charles's will, while private, may set precedents that influence not just royal estates but how aristocratic families across Britain handle blended legacies. More importantly, the succession narrative now hinges not only on the survival of the institution, but on its ability to modernize without fracturing. As winter sets in, the Windsor household projects calm. Charles continues his duties. Catherine resumes her slow public return. William reinforces his image as a modern yet dutiful heir. Yet, the undercurrent remains Camilla's quiet disappointment, Laura's symbolic absence, Anne's ever-watchful presence. The monarchy has weathered the storm, but its survival will depend on more than silencing whispers. It will require navigating the blurred lines of tradition and modernity, ensuring that every decision reflects not just history, but the future Britain expects. And in that balancing act lies the crown's most enduring test.